Okay, it's the end of the session. This is Chico, this is Diego, and this is their roadmap to success. Now, basically, these are some great dogs. This is an older dog. He's been in the house a long time. He's the new addition. And he had a buddy, a running buddy, that unfortunately passed away. And so he's kind of the replacement, but he's a very different dog. And so I think what's going on with these dogs is they were a little under-exercised, primarily him being under-exercised. I don't think Chico needs as much exercise. They were able to tell their humans what to do, and they didn't really have a lot of rules. And so they got confused in thinking that they had the same authority. Climbing on top of someone is not disrespectful. It is usually an indication of lack of respect for the person as an authority figure. We have a boss here. If an employee goes into the boss's office and puts their feet up on the desk when the boss is gone to eat lunch at her desk, it's probably not cool. But you can kind of joke around with your boss and tell some jokes and different stuff. But there's lines of delineation that help us understand that is the boss and I'm the underling. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the dog being on top of you, but it should be with an invitation from the human so that it's my body and I'm inviting the dog to share my leg with them as opposed to them just climbing on top of me as if I'm an afterthought. So the very first thing we did, we talked about upping exercise. Diego definitely is a higher energy dog. He's a puppy pretty much. I consider him puppies until about 3. Now, sometimes in the next year, he should start kind of mellowing out a little bit. But until then, we need to deplete his excess energy. One of the things the Guardians wanted me to work with is Chico sometimes has to be the foil and has to be the one exercising him. So I first showed him how to use a laser as a creative way to, the way the house is laid out, you can kind of do a V-shaped formation. So the first thing I would do is do it when he has an empty stomach, and I would have Chico somewhere else. Maybe Chico's at work when we're practicing the first time. Empty stomach and do as many V's and count each circuit. So it goes from the entryway to all the way to the back, then back here, and then back at the back of the house, and then back. That would be 1. And then do that as many times until Diego's like, I lay down on the floor, I'm done, I'm not coming. Now you know what his maximum is. Let's say it's 50. Probably only takes you maybe 7 or 8 minutes to do 50 of those, where to do the same equivalent of a walk would take like a 45-minute to an hour walk. So it's a lot faster because the dog's moving faster because it's pursuing something. Do that. That would be one way of doing it. Scent games, you can go to Google and just Google scent, S-C-E-N-T, games. If a dog uses its nose, it's a much stronger, it's a good workout for them. Now in the video above, we talked about tips and tricks to help the dogs with walks. Walks are a great way to burn exercise, not as efficient as fetch or chasing a laser, and fetch would be another one to do as well. The Guardians may want to think about getting an iFetch, which is an automatic ball throwing machine. This little passive training, we'll talk about this in a second. And try to remember to pet under the chin, sit, more passive training. And so basically, I recommend Guardians start an exercise journal, write down the day at the top, write down a column for each dog, and then write down 9 o'clock, went for this long of a walk, 11:45, did this many of the lasers, 1:15, did some fetch, whatever it is. Keep doing that, and then at the end of the day, give each dog a letter grade. And when he won't let Chico alone and wants to play with Chico, Chico wants to get away, write down the time and what was going on there. Write down the times you feed him, as well as like potty training or whatever it is. Some other things as well. And after a while, you'll start noticing, you know what? Every time it's longer than 4 hours since Diego gets to chase a laser or play fetch, that's when he goes after, I'm going to say Chico. So now we just beat him to the punch, and every 3 hours we get him some exercise. And so depleting the dog's excess energy is not going to fix the problems. Yes, he's very determined. But it will make fixing your problems easier. And it's going to be easier for Chico. So Chico doesn't look as my responsibility to completely exercise the dog. Keep that exercise journal about 2 weeks to a month until you're getting both dogs A-letter grades. And then you know kind of what you need to do. Now, I'm not going to talk about walking and all the rest of that stuff because it's encapsulated a pretty long video we did above. But I will talk about some rules we incorporated. One of the Guardians was not very happy when I suggested maybe making the furniture off limits. Now, I would not allow anybody but Chico to be up here because Chico's a senior dog, so we allow him to be up here so he has more status. The higher dog sits, the more rank or social status they have. For him, I would say, and I would say for Chico, he's not even allowed to be on the furniture unless he gets an invitation. You can give him invitations whenever you want, but he has to ask for it. If he comes and sits and pauses in front of you, that's a way of asking. So make sure you try to acknowledge that whenever possible. And when Diego's being a nuisance, that would be a time when we let Chico come up here. Now, Chico has a safe place to go that Diego can't go. But remember, when Diego's misbehaving, that's Diego's way of saying, excuse me, I need some exercise. Play the laser or whatever it is. So another rule, so for this one, I taught him to go down by touching the dog's nose with a treat, throwing it on the ground. The dog goes down and licks it up off the ground. We would say the word off. And then at that point, if the dog tries to come up, I wouldn't stand here like this, sit here like this. But as soon as the dog tried to jump, I would flash my hand at the last minute. The dog hits it and bounces off. The idea is we don't want to hurt our dogs, but if we give them a ride down every time, or we throw the treat each time, then they're just going to keep on doing it. Come. Now this becomes eventually an exception with an invitation for him too, but we're going to wait until his problems have passed behind before we start giving that privilege. And that's what it is, a privilege. So if he gets up here, he starts gnawing on Chico. Chico doesn't like it, now he has to get down. Or if he gets down to get a drink of water, he would need another invitation to come back up here. So that way the human is in charge of the resource. Another rule would be making the dog sit before we let it in or out of the door. Go to the door and say sit once. The dog doesn't sit within 3 seconds. Walk away, sit down somewhere, ask Siri for a 60-second timer. After 60 seconds, go back and tell the dog to sit again. Doesn't sit this time within 3 seconds. I walk away for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. Keep doubling the length of time that you walk away. Make sure you're seated and get a timer, because the time will go by too quick, or too short. We want it doubled. And eventually what will happen is you go to tell the dog to sit at the door, it sits down, and then you open the door, and the opening the door becomes the reward for the dog. Eventually, the dog will go sit at the door as its way of indicating what's to go out. Chico does that, Diego doesn't, but eventually he'll do that as well. At first do it with one direction, but eventually do it in both directions. I also went over the escalating consequences of standing up and hissing, or hissing and then standing up, I did it in the wrong order, about how to disagree with unwanted behaviors. So another couple of rules would be when the humans are eating food here, the dogs are not allowed to be on the couch, or like a little box area in front of the area when they're eating food. The rest of the time the dogs can be in here, but really probably on the dog bed for Diego and Chico up here, but not when we're eating. When the humans are eating at the dinner table, they shouldn't be allowed within 7 feet of the table there. When we're preparing food in the kitchen, they're not allowed to be there. When Diego has a bone, Chico shouldn't be allowed to come near him, and vice versa, or food. I also like to see the guardians feeding the dogs in the order of their rank. So the human who's feeding eats first. The way I do it is I put food in both bowls, don't let either dog in the kitchen. And you might want to do that little sliding partition that I talked about to go into your dining room, make it easier to defend. And then each time only slide it over a little bit less. And so eventually it's the whole doorway. But basically, once the food's in both bowls, use the hissing and the standing up and marching at them until the dogs stay behind the boundary. Then I lean against the counter and eat some chips or crackers, something in 5 or more bites. Come. And when I'm done, then I'm going to invite Chico over to eat first. Chico's going to eat first. Chico, come here, buddy. Diego, you're chewing on his feet. That's not cool. So because he's a senior dog, he needs to eat next, so he has more rank than Diego does. So when Chico's done eating, if he walks away from his bowl and there's food left in the bowl, we're going to pick up his bowl, we're going to dump it empty and put the empty bowl back down. 99% of the time, Chico's going to go lick the empty bowl. What happened? Well, if we leave food in the bowl, then that's going to demotivate him to eat, and also he's probably going to eat it anyways. So we're going to basically, when you give permission to eat, you better eat what I ask you to, or there's no food again until the next meal. And make sure the bowl's on the ground so they walk by and see the empty bowl. Otherwise, they think you just took the food away if you put it up on the counter. Then when Chico's done, then he has to leave the area, then we invite Diego in. So both dogs see us controlling the eating, and we're not letting the other dog invade their personal space to try to intimidate them, which is what they would do if they've gotten into their personal space. Now, I like using passive training, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but I would come up with a word that means eat for each dog. So maybe the name of your favorite restaurant for one dog, the name of your favorite food for the other dog. And so we have 2 guardians, maybe each guardian picks one of those commands. But again, try to keep it funny, and commands should always be one-word commands, preferably shorter, but try to come up with commands that make people laugh. If you call it, fajitas or something, and the dog goes and eats and your friends like eating fajitas, they're going to think it's funny, sushi or whatever it is you want to do. And so that smile is going to just be beneficial for the rest of the dog's life, and all it takes you is a little creativity. Petting with a purpose and passive training are 2 other things I went over. Those are great ways to add structure or to reward desired behaviors and motivate the dogs to do things we want them to do. So for petting with a purpose, if the dog comes up and nudges me or scratches at me or jumps at me or barks at me, if I pet it, I'm telling the dog, yes, you're in charge of me. So instead what I do is I tell the dog to sit. When the dog sits, I pet it under its chin and I say just the word sit. If it's already sitting here, I might ask it to come and sit over here, or I might ask it to lay down. Eventually, what will happen is the dog will come and sit in front of you to prepay for that attention. When it does, reach over, pet it under its chin, say the word sit, recognize it. Now, I have 2 watchwords for petting with a purpose. I say paycheck if I suspect somebody is petting without a purpose. and that person has to stop petting, tell the dog to sit or lay down, pet him under the chin, and then explain to the other person, I actually did it right, you just didn't see it. But don't argue with them about it, because that confuses the dogs. Like I said, after a while, they'll start prepaying for it and sitting in front of you to prepay or ask for the attention. When they do that, make sure you do recognize that and pet them. And so I usually have a word for that, like reward or something like that. It means the dog's just doing something, you're missing it, make sure you pet it. Otherwise, they'll go back to jumping up on you. Now that's petting with a purpose, which is redirecting the dog when the dog demands attention from you. You're telling the dog to do something else to earn it, or the dog is prepaying for the attention. That helps shifting the leader-follower dynamic into an ask versus a tell. The other side of the coin is what I call passive training. And passive training, as you saw here earlier in the video, the dog came to me on its own accord. I petted it and said, come. I just worked with the writer for this show yesterday. She's like, we knew they were discontinuing Orange is the New Black, but if she's watching, so she's an awesome writer. But passive training is waiting for the dog to voluntarily do something that you want it to do and recognizing and rewarding it for doing it. So if every time your dog comes to you, you pet it and say, come. Every time it lays down, you pet it and say, crash or chill. Every time that it poops, you say business or whatever the word is. Now remember, anytime you're using a command, the dog should hear the command word after it does it. And if you're using a treat, the treat should go in the mouth first, then they should hear the command word immediately afterwards. Now, if I'm teaching the dog how to do something, I taught the dog how to do hurricane. I wasn't saying hurricane at first until the dog was doing the full circle, then I was popping at the dog's mouth. And so for passive training, make sure that you're recognizing those things. Every time your dog does something unusual, brings you a special toy that's shaped like a zebra, pet it and say zebra. Every time it eats its food, you come up with a command word for the food or whatever these things are. And that way we create that vocabulary. One of the dogs doesn't have potty issues, but he doesn't have a word to go potty. So I would assign a command word there. Just go outside, and every time the dog pees or poops, say the word business or whatever the word is. And then when it finishes, pop a treat in its mouth and say the word business again. So the first time associates the word with the action. The second time associates the action action with the command word. Second time rewards connects the command word with the reward. And eventually they're all synonymous. And then you can say business. When the dog bounces up and down, you know yes, it has to go. Now, speaking of circles, I showed the dogs how to do the guardians how to teach them circle, which I call actually hurricane. So when you do it, make sure that you're keeping the treat at the dog's nose level. If you pull it away, it's going to cause the dog's head to go up, and then it creates more of a jumping up. So keep it at the dog's nose level and do a full circle. Now, first we're having a treat in our hand as we do it, and we do the circle. After a while, and I do that, like 5 or 6 of them in a row. Thank you, drop. Drop would be another one for passive training. Every time he drops like that, pet him and say drop. Or if he doesn't drop, hold a treat in front of his nose when he drops it, then pop the treat in his mouth and say the word drop, but don't go for the object. That will make the dog not want to drop it. For the circle or hurricane, do the circle at first with a treat in your hand for 5 treats, then have the treat in this hand, but have this hand still smell like the treat. So you just lead the dog around in a circle with the scent, and then you treat from this hand and say the word hurricane. And you want to keep on doing that until eventually you can say hurricane, and eventually you move your hand without the treat higher and higher as a circle, and eventually you can go like this, and you create a command word. This means do the circle or hurricane. And eventually you want to be able to do it when the dog's standing over there, say hurricane, and the dog just does a circle. And I would do it with both dogs. The nice thing is he likes to get humped. Well, he doesn't like to, he doesn't mind it, but he gets humped a lot at the dog park. Well, if you teach your dog to do a circle or a hurricane, and on command, and the dog gets mounted, and you say hurricane, does a circle, hurricane, after 2 or 3 times, the other dog's like, I'm looking for an easier dog that doesn't know this advanced circle trick. So it's a great way, that's why we taught it. But it's also a nice trick, fun trick to do. I would do it with both dogs. Eventually they're on the floor, you say hurricane, they both do little circles. It makes your friends laugh. It's kind of funny. Speaking of which, I'd like the guardians to actually teach the dogs tricks and commands. The dogs know some tricks and commands already, probably more than a lot of my clients do. But the more tricks and commands the dog knows, the better suit the self-esteem and confidence it's going to have. So it's a great way to boost the dog's self-esteem and also deepen the leader-follower relationship and the dog's respect for the humans as authority figures. I also showed a focus exercise. Remember, keep it 1 second, 1 second for all 12 treats. And then the next person does 1 second, 2 seconds for the second movement for all 12 treats. Next time, 1 second, 3 seconds for all 12 treats. And get to the point where you're at 15 seconds within 7 days, within a week. Dogs get bored of this, and they also need momentum. So practice probably the focus exercise. You want to practice maybe each guardian practices 2 times a day with each dog. It shouldn't take you longer than about 60 seconds to do the exercise, unless you're getting towards the end. Even then, it's only going to take 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. So it's really short, but it's a great way to redirect the dog's attention. But look, go to YouTube, find other tricks and commands. Teach dogs to roll over, play dead, bring you a beer, get your slippers, or whatever it is. The more of those that you can teach your dog, like I said, the more self-esteem and confidence that we'll have. Let me see. We talked about the walk above. Make sure that the guardians are eating something before they feed the dogs, and feed Chico first, like we talked about. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I went over that you want me to recap here?
I think so.
If you do have any questions, I think this is pretty much summarizing all of it, but if you do have any questions, please text me or call me. Now remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is going to be what you're amplifying, including unbalanced states of mind. So if the dog is fearful and you pet it, you're going to make it slightly more fearful. Same thing with passive training. When the dog is chill and relaxed, maybe say zen. Pet it in a very slow stroke, about 2 seconds for each stroke, and say zen or chill when the dog is zen or chill. And then later on, you can say zen when the dog's going crazy and it knows what's going on. Now at work, if the dog is reacting to other dogs or people at work, we want to increase the distance between the dog and whatever it is that we're working on. And then maybe once you bring it away, sometimes you have to take it out of the line of sight, so it can't see whatever it's reacting to. And once it's settled down a little bit, do a little bit of that focus exercise. It's a great way to redirect the dog's attention. And when it comes back in, don't let it rush all the way back up to that other person or dog. Maybe put it on a leash. Take a couple steps in. As soon as the dog starts pulling, stop. You can use that leash technique, the luring technique that I showed you, and I would practice that independent of going for a walk. Practice it inside the house as well as in your yard eventually. But eventually you can just say that focus, whatever the command word is you want to assign, the dog comes back into that heel position. So basically, if you have any questions or problems, please let me know. If I don't hear from you, I assume that means everything's going great. All right, well, let's see if I can get a treat over here and see the guardian's already doing something awesome. She's petting in a chill way. Diego. Oh, this motion will ask the dog to come. The lower you go, the more it's for the dog. Diego, watch this. Wow, that didn't even work for who I was going for. Come. So this is Chico. This is Diego. This is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.